for us.
Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign, and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding. We, thine unworthy servants, here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations. And grant that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the king, the public weal, peace, and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Be seated, please. This meeting of the Honorable Senate of Jamaica for Friday, the 17th day of July, 2026 is called to order, and I recognize all those who are joining us by way of the social media and other various media in Jamaica and abroad. This meeting of the Honorable Senate is suspended to take a special matter. Members, as you have no doubt been informed, it is my great pleasure, and I'm sure equally the pleasure of all the members of the Senate, to welcome with us today Professor Kwame Dawes, CD, who is the Poet Laureate of Jamaica. And we welcome you today, Poet Laureate. He's joined, you can sit, no, sit for a while, yes. I will. He's joined by his sister, Miss Adoja Dawes, who I understand is a Spanish teacher who had a significant impact on the life of our Senator Golden Campbell, and his nieces, Janelle and Abigail. And also from the Jamaica Library Service, Francine Francis, who is the Director of Special Programs, and Mr. Mario Ricketts, who is in charge of National Libraries, Public Relations. Now, before I give you the brief introduction, I must say that I was I put into a reflective mood, because the Poet Laureate is a schoolmate of Senator Lambert Brown and I. And for Senator Lambert and I to recognize a schoolmate with the impeccable qualifications of Professor Dawes, the Poet Laureate of Jamaica, means that Lambert Brown and I both fell through the cracks. And in fact, in speaking to the Poet Laureate, he was saying that his father had actually studied English at Oxford. So we can blame Oxford, not Jamaica College. So Senator Brown, we are in good company today. So it is the distinct pleasure of all of us, Poet Laureate, to welcome you to the Senate of Jamaica. And persons ask, what exactly is the role of the Poet Laureate? That role is to promote and encourage greater appreciation of Jamaican poetry, while fostering a deep public appreciation for the spoken arts and Jamaica's rich literary history. And I had the occasion to witness an interaction between the Minister of Education and Professor Dawes, and I think that to a large extent, both are on the same page with the need to introduce a greater appreciation for literature in the schools. Professor Dawes is the 4th public laureate of Jamaica since independence, and he follows the distinguished line of Jamaican literary luminaries who have served in this role. Professor Mervyn Morris, from 2014 to 16, Lorna Goodison, 17 to 20, and Olive Senior, 21 to 24. Now, you will also recall, members of the Senate, that both Olive and Lorna Goodison, Olive Senior and Lorna Goodison have paid visits here. So we had previously had the privilege of welcoming Poet Laureates Goodison and Senior, and we are delighted to continue this tradition today by receiving you, Professor Dawes. Professor Dawes was invested as Poet Laureate of Jamaica in January 2025 and will serve a tenure of 3 years. In 2004, he was awarded the Musgrave Silver Medal, and in 2022 received the Order of Distinction, the rank of Commander, from the government of Jamaica for his contribution to the literary arts. Professor Dawes is the author of numerous books of poetry and other books of fiction, criticism, and essays. His most recent collection, entitled Mortality and Sturgestown, the latter of which was longlisted for the National Book Critics Award Circle Prize in 2025. He is presently a professor of the literary arts at Brown University. He also lectures in the Master of Fine Arts program at the Pacific University and the series edition of African Poetry Book Series, Director of African Poetry Book Fund, and Artistic Director of the Calabash International Literary Festival. And I pause, of course, to recognize the role that the Calabash Book Festival has had in Jamaica across many, many divides. And it's certainly something that we as a nation appreciate. Professor Dawes is the Chancellor Emeritus of the Academy of American Poets and a Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature. He is the winner of the prestigious Wyndham Campbell Award for Poetry and was a finalist in the 2022 International Poetry Prize for Literature, that is the New STAD. Senators, please join me in welcoming a JC Old Boy, Professor Kwame Dawes. Professor Dawes, I now invite you to favor us with an introduction and a selection of your work.
Thank you very much, Mr. President of the Senate, and thank you, Senators, for welcoming me so warmly. It is good to be here, and I'm especially grateful because I think and hope this is a tradition that will continue, that we can recognize the appointed Poet Laureate of the country in these, as they say, hallowed halls, occasionally. But it's really, really, really a tremendous honor to be here. And I wanted to just talk briefly about my role as Poet Laureate and some of the things that have become very important to me in the work that I'm doing. And then I'll read some poems because, you know, when in doubt, read a poem is the way that I see it. And if you fall asleep, then the poems are doing their job. They're helping you to sleep because sleep is good for you. And if you stay awake, then they're also doing their job, which is to irritate you and agonize you, which is good for you as well, as you know. So either way, you're going to come out the better for having heard some poetry. One of the reasons I'm here at this point, especially, I mean, apart from being here, is to mount the second of a series that we're working on celebrating the voices of Jamaican poets who have passed, major poets. And it's a series that features a poet each time. And we're doing it over at the Philip Sherlock venue. And we have right artists who are reading the poetry of these major poets. We did Claude McKay a month or so ago. And then on Saturday, we'll be celebrating Una Marson, one of the great Jamaican poets. And then later on in the year, we'll be celebrating Louis Bennett. And then finally, we'll celebrate my father, Neville Dawes. I believe the poet, I've said it again and again, and this has given me purpose and direction as a poet. I believe poets are the chroniclers of the sentiment of our times and their times. And why are they important? Historians will chronicle the facts and the details of life. Sociologists will talk about the thinking and the ways in which human beings relied on society and structures to live their lives. There are many ways in which the history of human beings are chronicled. But what poets do is that they enter into the sentiment, the history of the sentiment. If we want, in a moment, to think that as human beings, we carry through the ages 2,000, 3,000 years ago, this is a fundamental function of the poet, to capture the moment of our lives. And as a people who were once enslaved, who were once deprived of the opportunity to use language and to chronicle in language, the fact that we are doing so now is massively important, and it should be of tremendous value to us that the voices of those who have gone before us, who have spoken before us, who have written and published before us, be maintained and retained as a resistance to the erasure that other oppressive systems had put upon us. So this is why I do what I do. And the beauty of it is that I'm only interested in the sentiment and the feeling as a fundamental part of human existence and human value. So that's the framework that guides my work and guides what I do in encouraging the reading of poetry, the reading of literature, and the engagement with literature. As Poet Laureate, this has been the driving force of it, whether it's to archive the material, whether it's to make it available through the internet, through social media, and whether it's to remind ourselves as a people that we are a people who understand poetry. This is what we're about. This is what Calabash is about, and this is what I'll continue to do, even after I've left this office. So I'm going to read some poems, and hopefully we will get some value out of it. I want to start, though, by naming my father, Neville Dawes. I doubt if he would have seen himself talking to the Jamaican Parliament, but I think he would appreciate the irony of this situation. My father was the director of the Institute of Jamaica, so he had much encounter with leading things in this country and being part of the culture of the country. And his value for the country is tremendous. So I thought I'd read a poem by him called Acceptance. To me, one of his most beautiful poems. I praise the glorious summers of Pimento, sun purple, riper than the wet red clay smell of my youth. By corn light and river run, as dog and I, we screamed the small green hill and the salt smooth wind from the leaping sea, sang in the yellow sunflower. I praise the dumb, scared child I was in coffee groves and the barbecues of graves, smelling of ghosts, old country flesh laid by my father for his tribe, fictitious as angels. A small, alone boy riding to harvest hymns in the green of the day as the shackle bell tongued on the churchy hilltop. I praise the legends we made when the drunk hawks and worse were merry, waltzed up the day, hallowed the mountains of birds and the nestling curve of the reeling river, swam those eyes reading the first garden's blush and Adams when weathers twisted the old thunder voice. I was King Arthur's irrelevant steed on the lightning page, castling all races, all men, the drunk hawks and worse, climbing together to the top of the colorless rain in the dappling sun. I praise all this, returning to a shower of mango blossoms, the creaking hill, the creaking village, the old eyes, the graves, the sun's kiss. And lonely as ever, as the bare cedars, I walk by the stream where boys still plash, dusking and falling in the star-apple sunset, and find her there, ancient as the lost lands, bandanaed and gray and calling. Then I read the monumental legend of her love and grasp her wrinkled hands. It's a poem called Thelma's Precious Cargo. I wrote this poem many years ago, but it's a poem about immigration, but it's also a poem that at the heart of it is talking about what we carry with us and what our people have carried with us. So this is Thelma's Precious Cargo. She was bringing fried fish, festival, banana, dumpling, rose corn, sweet sugar cane, nicely peeled and cool, when the plastic glove customs officer squinge up him nose like him smelling him upper lip, decide to break heavy fruit, got open the fish, spilling all that white flesh and sweet fried tomato all over the table. Same was searching for drugs, searching for disease from this great-grandmother with centuries springing in her eyes, who come just to catch a sight of the children she never met and who might grow up without the grounding of stories she's been carrying all these years. But Thelma never panicked before, no child. She simply gathered the ruins and then spread her bandana flaming red with yellow light on the blue steel carpet in the corner. And she placed every Indian offering on the shimmering surface. Thelma light a red candle and draw a circle round the feast like a prayer. And then she invite the people them who line up to face the plastic glove man to come sit with our grandson, who's smiling like he can't stop all this time, and eat a good sunrise meal. No fuss, just this laughing in our eyes. And them drink off all the sweet sap juice, laced with a little Appleton fire, and them eat that food like communion. And when them was finished, Thelma say a prayer and whisper a little forgiveness to the boy with the gloves. And them calmly wobble through the customs, clean as a priest before service, with all the jugs and disease swimming and singing in them belly, walking like that into the sweet Canadian air, warm as ever and ready. Well, Thelma tell the story again and again, and it ends with the last sweet line. She said, Mama, them should have followed it to the toilet today, you know. For some of them seed find soil, child, and see the tree them there still. Africa people been carrying them possessions in them doo-doo forever. Precious cargo, child, precious cargo. And man, we couldn't stop laugh. Yes. Oh, boy. So here's a poem. Some years ago, I had the honor to visit Addis Ababa, to visit Ethiopia. I was on assignment with the BBC to write about Haile Selassie. The truth is that the BBC approached me to write about Haile Selassie in Bath, England. And so I said, well, who wants to go to Bath? So I said, well, I can't do Bath, England. I have to do Ethiopia. I mean, we have to arrange that. So them said, all right, you can go to Ethiopia. And so that took me to Ethiopia, which was a trip that I've always wanted to make. And I went there at the beginning of the new year in Ethiopia. So this is a poem that I wrote. It's called New Year's Eve in Addis. I'll do 2 poems from that period. Addis is dark at night, as if the low-grade electricity cannot burn through the heavy gloom. On New Year's Eve, the shops are emptying, the pavements are covered with the aromatic green of cut grass, and women sell bundles of the welcome carpets and dry firewood. The smoke begins to thicken in the air from bonfires with a red glow at each house and small dwelling. It is hard to breathe so far up in the highlands. The air is being purified. All sins, all errors, all wayward acts burnt away by flame. The smoke clogs the nostrils with the acrid reminder of failure. The penitents will bathe in the soft rainwater, cover their skin with palms full of medicated powder, and the bodies will be robed in gleaming white, the cloth of hope. In the dim light of pre-dawn, the women follow the antiphonal groans of the priest in St. Stephen's. The scent of incense can carry for miles in the cool morning air. They arrive at the courtyard and begin to press clean lips to the floor of the sanctuary, to open clean palms and cup the blessings falling from crosses, maze of lines. Like women bathing in a river, they scoop the healing on their heads, their voices muttering the gaze of penitence until they too can enter the holy place and bow. The past must enter the blood as ritual. That which remains is the gold and the precious silver of tradition. In this season, we learn the theology of forgiveness, the promise of forgetting all things, the amnesia of the gospel. It is how people could forget the monument of the emperor, how, come Mascal, the sins of a brutish summer can turn into smoke, a burning in the eyes, some tears for a while the balm of weeping, then cleansing of prayer, and the ordinary rituals of facing new days. The penitent does not make God. It is God who made the penitent. It is not for us to know the answers. Questions are for those who have not yet learned the insignificance of the short time we have here in this earth. So one of the interesting experiences, thank you, blessings. If you ever get to Ethiopia during the New Year celebration, it's beautiful. They cut the green, the colors, and so on are powerful. And the Ethiopian Orthodox Church reminds you of how old this Christianity is. It's not a Western religion as we presume it to be, but a religion that has grown out of a people in a tremendous way. So one of the interesting things about this trip was that I went to visit a man called Solomon Ephraim Wolf. He had been to Jamaica. He was a Jamaican who had moved during Haile Selassie's gift to diasporal Africans to come to a place called Sheshemani and build a life there. And Wolf had come there in the 60s from Jamaica. And one of the interesting moments for me was I was interviewing him and asking him about Haile Selassie and so on. So I made the mistake of asking him, how did it feel when the emperor died? Well, he never take that so well. And so I'll read the poem that tells the story of the happening. It's called African Postman, for Solomon Ephraim Wolf. Son, who is that? Is the African postman daddy, burning spear. East from Addis Ababa, and then south, deep into the Rift Valley. I can hear the horns trumpeting over the flat-roofed acacia trees, see the African women bend low with wood heavy on their backs, and the cows, goats, donkeys, mules, sheep, and horses snapped into obedient herds by sprinting children moving along the roadside. Life happens here. I am traveling to the land I have heard about, Sheshemani, the green place, 500 acres of just benevolence, and I know now that I long to hear the roots man tell me how, despite the rumors of his passing, the natty keeps on riding, keeps on standing in the fields of praise to hold on to the faith of roots people. Brother Solomon, you put this name Ephraim on your head and carry the face of the true Rasta, the face of an Ashanti warrior, eyes deep, heavy lids, and your skin tight as leather, blacker than black. I have met you before on the streets of Kingston, there where you trod to the hiss and slander of the heathen, you, Natty Dread, gathering the people's broken minds into your calabash. You carry it all. Tell them, return to the roots. The healing shall take place. You are burning spear's voice in the fields of Teph. You tell me of the prophecy of Marcus, and I listen to you through the phlegm, through the gruff of your voice, and suddenly, When I ask about the passing of the emperor, you rise up like a staff of correction, your voice reaching back to the mountains, your warrior self, your yardman greatness, and you speak a mystery to those who have ears but won't hear, and those who have eyes and won't see. And I know that this dread will one day stand in this soil and find his feet growing roots, that soon the earth will be darker for the arrival of Solomon. Let the heathens rage, let the doubters scoff, let this Ghanaian youth whose eyes have seen the face of Jesus Christ, let him too sit and marvel at the faith of the natty. For the African postman has forsaken father and mother and has come to stand before his imperial majesty to call him only father so that the father might call him son. And the world will carry on its weary march. And the ibises will swoop in the Ethiopian dusk, and the smoke will rise from wood fires, and the night will come with news that the roots man, after 400 years of being told he is homeless, has come home. Yes, Jah has come home. Sons and daughters of his imperial majesty, Haile Selassie, earth rightful ruler, without any apology say, this is the time when I should come home. Yes, Jah. Now let go. Now let go. So my Christian brethren are panicking at this poem. But don't worry. My faith has grown by my knowledge of Rasta. My faith in Christ has grown by my knowledge of Rasta. To root it in my identity and who I am. And this is a learning that I cherish and value, because when I came to Jamaica, I got laughed at by Jamaicans for being African. I got teased at Shortwood practice in school. My brother's name was Unka, as in Unka, Unka, kill, kill. That was his nickname, Unka. But the Rasta man, them welcomed me and said, tell me about Africa. Tell us about that place. And that was a healing for me. Speaking of healing, I want to read a poem. I'll read 2 more poems and then I'll be done. And this is a poem after the Hurricane Melissa hit Jamaica. And it's a poem called Replenishment. And it is a prayer for Jamaica. Home is where one starts from. And here is a small Coptic prayer from Egypt. Raise the Nile to its measures according to your grace, O Lord. Give joy to the face of the earth. May its furrows be abundantly watered and its fruits be plentiful. Prepare the lands for sowing and harvesting. Manage our lives as deemed fit. And then a note from Bob Marley. Up a Cane River to wash my dreads. Upon a rock I rest my head. Trenchtown. May great river continue to seep into the dark soil. May rainfall replenish the mountain streams. May the green of restoration widely spread across the broken land. May the seeds we plant burst with vitality and substance. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Amen. All my life, the planting of seeds begins with an amen, or some good luck ritual to conjure the soil to have mercy on the seeds, to yield the substance of things hoped for. I had no flowing streams of a farmer's assurance. Gardens meant seeds like dice and prayers that some mercy should spread. I would scatter the seeds and tenderly pat and spread the dark soil, stand, clap my hands and say, Amen. For I knew my history of failure when I blamed the seeds for being deceptions or announced the soil to be cursed. And to compensate, I would pour streams of water on the bald ground, no yield, no sprouting substance, just rot and silence. I long then for the substance of Coptic prayers, each morning's liturgy spread over the living and the dead in earnest streams, praying, Nile, O Nile, be green, sprouting, amen. I envy those saints who pray each day for the fecund soil to yield, as covens of women pray for wombs to seed. But I am a city dweller with a fist full of brittle seeds, making my way into the hills to deliver their substance to the survivors. The cracked roads, the upturned soil, the shattered tree trunks, naked of leaves, and the spread of destruction. At the path's bend, I whisper a heavy amen, a deep sigh when I see the great rivers, streams of water tumbling down. I know that these streams of water are the substance of chaos and the hope for thirsty seals. They are the grace and the mercy. They are the amen of the people's prayers. They are the substance of what is hoped for. At the slippery banking, I spread my arms wide and say, Dear God, replenish this soil. Replenish this broken ground. Birth seeds with streams of good water to spread the substance of faith, the soil's amen, over this broken island. And we say, amen, amen, and amen. So I'm going to end with a poem which is very intimate to me. It's a poem for my wife, Lorna. She was Davis, she's now Dawes, has been for, as it turns out, 36 years. She made a very prudent decision. But it's a poem that I want to remember as an evocation of family, an evocation of what makes us do what we do, what you do, why you do it. You do it for the people you love. You do it for the country you love. And that's important to keep at the forefront of what we do. It keeps us honest, doesn't it, if we put that forward. So here's a poem called In This Saying. There's a way to end books, the gathered papers, their weighty gift, the clean parade of words, in columns of paragraphs and in columns of images, the tidiness of things, and numbered, they form the thing you have labored for over the years. To end a book, you tie a blue ribbon around the heft, make a bow, kiss it. The way to end the year of cataclysms is to find a piece of land by water where old boats rot at the edges and the place smells of ancient things, sulfur, salt, rotting fish, and the drop deep musk of mud and grass. To then sit on a moving jetty rocking against the universe's pulse and there wait for the moon. To end this way alone is to end with the hollow melancholy of loss and regret. Better to end with the voice of your woman, for you will need that voice, ordinary as rain, talking your name. Perhaps it's the intrusion of her scent filling the air, the cool of her touch, slick with tomato pulps and herbs. I know the him and her of this poem. Don't worry. It's because I know the names of the bodies standing in the dusk by the water. Kwame and Lorna. They will hold hands. And in this saying, the poem ends. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Poet Laureate.
Thank you very much.
It's an inspiring morning to have met you before we came in, and of course, listening to your beautiful words. Minister, you have something to say?
Thank you so much, Mr. President, and permission to speak from a seat that's not mine. I have to thank this morning our Poet Laureate for coming and inspiring us with those wonderful poems that you did today. And it's a reminder of how important poetry is in this country. And I know for me, in terms of my own journey, the written word has been very important. I can't write any poetry. I'm very good at appreciating poetry. But it is very important that our children have access to this. Our children are bombarded by lots of other content, visions of themselves that may not be wholesome and really supportive of the kind of citizens we want to create in this country. And it is very important that they hear poems, they hear literature that speaks about them and their experience. And you said that poets were chroniclers of our lives, and that is very important. And that work that you do is central to this project to Jamaica that we are on. And so I know as Minister of Education, I stand ready to work with you. I thank you for what you've done in Calabash. One of the highlights of my time as Minister of Education was to be able to read at Calabash. And so I thank you for that. And there's a lot more that we have to do together, because we have to help our children to feel that good sense of self and to know that being a Black Jamaican child is something that's powerful. And through poetry and through literature, we can help them to tap into that greatness that is there and to also understand themselves and who they are. And so I really want to thank you, and I thank you for just so openly agreeing to help me in the Ministry of Education. I will be following up with you. We have big things to do together, and I know that we can achieve the goals we want to. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Scott Motley.
Mr. President, may I firstly thank you for the gift of this morning. The Parliament needs to have a soft side where they can get in touch with their souls. Thank you so much, Poet Laureate. For taking the time to be with us this morning. I confess that when I saw that you were born in Ghana and not in Jamaica, as I had contemplated, it did make me pause. But having spoken to you earlier and hearing you, I realize it has provided a bridge to connect you and to connect us with our roots. Poetry is in a way the window to your soul and a window to your experiences, a glimpse of where you're coming from, of where you need to go. And today, I must tell you the one that I really enjoyed was the one about the cargo. Because somehow, you know, I could see exactly what we were speaking of when we were with the president. And I could use my imagination just to understand what every single word meant and to see the personality who was there in that airport. Both the man who was checking everything and this strong, formidable, confident woman who was not going to be beaten at all by any circumstances. I hope that there are others who listened to you this morning and who will take that journey into their soul, who will find the beauty of your prose and your poetry. I remember the first Calabash that was in Jamaica. I was not pleased when it was my anniversary and my husband tells me we are going to a literary festival. I thought romantic dinner, you know, everything else. And it was at Jake's, the first, not many people and a little space. And it was the most wonderful, wonderful way that we could have spent an anniversary. You have brought not just pleasure, but learning. You speak to us in a way that somehow triggers something in our DNA. I know I'm going on and on. They know I have a tendency to do so, so they will forgive me. But I really want to say to you, thank you, and to your family, and to your wife. of 37 years, 36 years. Holding hands together is just the way to do it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, members. And once again, Senator Dawes, thank you very much to yourself and your family. Before I resume, I'm just going to see Senator Poet Laureate out. Oh, I'm sorry. You know, I should have, of course, mentioned Justine Hensley from Calabash and all the work that she has done, because she has been, you mentioned her specifically, and so did Senator Golden Campbell, and both leaders. So we mentioned them and put your appreciation, our appreciation for Calabash on the record. Of the Honorable Senate now resumes its sittings. Members, in public business today, we have a number of tributes to be paid, which I'm going to take now, and not, of course, first without recognizing the passing of the great Gary Sobers, who passed this morning. So we place on the record his passing and recognize his contribution to West Indian cricket, and more than West Indian cricket, his contribution to the West Indian character. Members, today one minute. Members, we begin our business having been inspired by our Poet Laureate, by recognizing the passing of Professor the Honorable Oswald Harding, OJ, CD, KC, JP, former President of the Senate and a former Minister of Government. And of course, it is with profound sadness that we recognize the passing of one of our own. Professor Harding, as Ozzy, as he was fondly known, was a gentleman and a scholar in the true sense of the word. He brought distinction to every field in which he served and left an indelible mark on the institutions which he helped to shape. His contribution to this Parliament was in itself extraordinary. He served as the President of the Senate across 3 terms, from 80 to 83, 83 to 84, and 2007 to 2011. During his parliamentary year, he also served as Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and as a Minister of Justice and Attorney General. He served as Leader of Government Business in the Senate, Leader of Opposition Business in the Senate. Harding held the distinction of having the longest continuous tenure as a senator in Jamaican's history, a testament to the confidence placed in his judgment, leadership, and commitment to democratic governance. He was a committed member of the Jamaica Labour Party, where he was a source of wise counsel. He held several leadership positions within the party, including Deputy Chairman and Treasurer, before being appointed a trustee of the party in 2006. Beyond the political sphere, Professor Harding rendered distinguished services in the field of law, diplomacy, and education. As a senior partner in the law firm of O.G. Harding and Company, he earned the respect of the legal profession through scholarship and integrity. As an academic, He served as Dean of the Law Faculty of the University of Technology, was Professor of Law and Philosophy at the University of Technology, and prior to this, served as Senior Lecturer in Philosophy at the University of the West Indies. Professor Harding had the distinction of being the first PhD graduate in philosophy produced by the University of the West Indies. He was instrumental in the establishment of the Faculty of Law at the University of Technology, thus helping to create the opportunity for generations of young, aspiring Jamaicans who wish to enter the field of law. His influence as an educator will continue to be felt for many years to come through the impact he had on his innumerable students. He was a man with a wide range of interests which reflected intellectual curiosity. An accomplished author, he published books, papers, and articles on a diverse range of topics. His autobiography, Grandson of Essie, the Ozzie Harding story, followed by near-death experience, a holographic explanation which examined the subject of out-of-body experiences. Professor Harding was well known as a lover of the arts and an avid collector. His Hardingham collection has been described as the largest single and perhaps most significant contemporary collection of ceramic in the Caribbean. I certainly know that he was a patron of the ceramicist Baugh and has a lot of his works which no doubt will find themselves contributed to the National Gallery of Jamaica at some time in the future. He was a member of Jamaica's Potters Association and the International Academy of Ceramics, which is headquartered in Geneva. And he also served for many years as the director of the National Gallery of Jamaica. His interest extended to sports. He was a member of the Kingston Cricket Club, Kingston Polo Club. His appreciation for artistic gastronomy, which I take it to mean he used to love to eat, also led him to become a member of La Chambre de ROTISSEURS. Can you help me with that, Golden Campbell? No. Professor Harding's life reflected his belief that true success was measured only by personal achievement, but also by one's contribution to society. He was not content to be a legislator or legal advocate or educator. He was also deeply committed to civic service, playing an active role in several organizations, including the Jamaican JCs, of which he was a former president. In recognition of his distinguished service, he was confirmed with the honor of JCI Senator, a life membership, the Junior Chamber International. A life committed to service brought him many accolades. In 2003, he was awarded the Order of Jamaica for his service to the legislature, having previously been made a commander in the Order of Distinction in 1995. I had the privilege and pleasure of serving with him in the Senate for a number of years, including for a term when I was his deputy. And I always remember and appreciate the guiding hand which he was never slow to offer me during those years. So while we remember his many achievements, we also remember the man himself, a son of the soil with deep commitment to Jamaica. He served his nation with distinction and honor, and his legacy will endure in this parliament, the legal arena, the cultural sphere, the field of civic engagement and academia. On behalf of this honorable Senate, I extend sincere condolences to his wife Margold, his sons Jeremy and Zachary, and other members of his family. Just a brief note that I recall that there was a discussion, internal discussion in the Jamaica Labour Party at one of its decision-making entities, and there was a discussion about the use of patois and whether patois should be recognized more widely in the country. And he was an advocate for Ozzy Harding, who spoke immaculate English, was a member, advocate for patois, and he was speaking about the need to have patois introduced to schools and so on. And somebody stood up around the back and said, in patois, you can't go on, because if you did chat patois, you couldn't step up on Marigold veranda. So I think that put a stop to the patois argument that Sunday morning. May his soul rest in eternal peace, and may light perpetual shine upon him. I will take. Just before I take the tributes from members, I should point out that the National Gallery of Jamaica did put out a tribute to Professor Harding, and I would ask that tribute, Mr. Clark, the tribute which I have here from the National Gallery, you can just attach it with the tribute that I have given when you prepare the documents to send to the family. Senator Gale? I'm going to take Senator Gale and then Senator Scott Motley.
Thank you, sir. You know, today we pay tribute to what I consider a remarkable Jamaican patriot. Professor the Honorable Oswald G. Harding, OJ, CD, KC, a distinguished attorney at law, parliamentarian, former president of this Honorable Senate, former government minister, deputy chairman of the Jamaica Labour Party, and a man whose life was defined by unwavering service to his party, his country, and its people. Professor Harding belonged to a generation of leaders who understood that public office was not about personal advancement, but about public duty. And whether he stood in this chamber, appeared before the courts, served in the cabinet, or represented his party on a political platform, he did so with dignity, wisdom, and exceptional eloquence. And he possessed the rare quality of being both firm in conviction and respectful in disagreement. He was truly an elder statesman whose counsel was always measured, thoughtful, and deeply rooted in principle. So his commitment to the Jamaica Labour Party was unquestionable. He lived by a famous declaration. He said he will follow Bustamante till we die. And for Ozzy Harding, those were not merely words, they were a lifelong creed. His relationship with the Right Excellency Alexander Bustamante was both personal and profound. He served Bustamante while the national hero visited England when Professor Harding was in England. And he continued to tirelessly work alongside him when he returned to Jamaica. And this became almost a kind of sacred duty for him and his family to visit Irish Town every Saturday. And he was, accompanied by Lady Marigold and his two young sons. I had the distinct pleasure, President, of knowing Professor Harding more closely after I became president. And he came to me at an event, And he smiled and said to me, I am a Buster laborite. And I've always wanted to become a member of the Bustamante Industrial Trade Union. He told me that once he made that request to Bustamante himself. And Buster didn't take him serious. Neither did I. But then I learned that, Buster had other plans for him. But yet, President, every single time we met thereafter, after the customary greetings, he would repeat the same request, almost with sincerity, that I want to be a member of the Bustamante Industrial Trade Union. And so it became a remark with a heartfelt desire. And after that repeat so many times, in 2012, I granted him that wish. In accordance with the union's constitution, sir, I had the honor of conferring upon him honorary membership of the Bustamante Industrial Trade Union.
President General, I don't mean to interrupt you,
You want to make an application
No,
also?
I've made the request before and you have been ignoring me. And I noticed that you take on the younger one, but you leave me out of the work.
But it also gave him the exceptional privilege of becoming and serving as a member of our managing executive committee. And, we truly appreciate it. But, President, it was not ceremonial, because one of the strange things we wondered is Professor Harding operated in a different time zone. So if the meetings were set at 10 o'clock, Professor Harding was there by 9 o'clock. And so he was operating 1 hour ahead in a different time zone. Always punctual, always in attendance. And that was the measure of the man and the commitment he gave. He told me that he was the author of Jamaica's first book on diplomacy. But then, when you look at the individual, you couldn't question that. When Bustamante passed in 1977, Professor Harding immediately went to his Irish Town residence to comfort Lady Bustamante. This is a story he told me. He brought his family with him, and before leaving, he asked the 2 young sons whether they wished to see Buster for a final time. They agreed, and he gently took them into the room where Jamaica's first national hero lay. President, years later, his youngest son, Zachary, was assigned a school exercise to write a poem, imagine, a poem, about his favorite national hero. And Zachary chose, of course, Sir Alexander Bustamante. And he ended the poem with the unforgettable line, I saw Buster lay dead in his bed. The teacher, understandably concerned by what seemed as an extraordinary, vivid imagination, summoned Zachary's mother to school. Lady Marigold Harding calmly explained that her son was simply telling the truth. As a young boy, he had indeed seen Sir Alexander Bustamante laying in repose after his passing. Of course, he saw Buster laying dead in his bed. That couldn't be questioned. President, that simple childhood memory says much more than words ever could. It speaks to the extraordinary relationship shared by Professor Harding and his family with Sir Alexander Bustamante and Lady Bustamante. And it reminds us that history is not made only in public meetings or recorded in official documents. Sometimes history is lived quietly in homes, in friendships, in loyalty, and in moments shared between great men and their families. And so through Professor Harding, many of us in the BITU heard stories of Bustamante that were never written in books, never recorded in Hansard, and never preserved in official archives. And they were stories passed from one generation to another, stories that reveal Bustamante's humanity, his humor, his compassion. His passing remarks at the end of an extraordinary chapter in our nation's history: Jamaica has lost a distinguished jurist and an accomplished parliamentarian, an outstanding president of the Senate, a loyal laborite, and an exemplary citizen. The Jamaica Labour Party has lost a cherished honorary member, mentor, and friend. I've lost someone whose wisdom and encouragement and steadfast example I deeply valued. And you know, every conversation with him would end with, "I have one next thing to tell you." And there continues the conversation. Mr. President, he has set standards that others would need to emulate. And he set great standards in this parliament. In fact, one of them, well, we heard that story of him not always being present in the seat and never allowed the deputy president at the time to be able to apply his signature. But then the emulation would have gone further. Professor Harding wore the wig. President, what have you done with the wig? And so one of the things about him is that despite his support, entrenched support for his party, he had friends across party lines. P.J. Patterson was one of his great friends. I also understood that Mayor Motley's father was another of his great friends. Well, on behalf of this Honorable Senate, I extend our deepest condolences to his beloved wife, Marigold, his children, grandchildren, and the entire Harding family. We also extend our sincere sympathies to the Jamaica Labour Party, to his many colleagues and friends, and to the members of the Bustamante Industrial Trade Union who were privileged to speak to him, to engage with him. May his soul rest in peace, and may his distinguished legacy continue to inspire generations of Jamaicans yet to come. May it please you, President.
Thank you very much, President General. Senator Scott Motley.
Mr. President, that was indeed a very interesting tribute. I want to say to Cavan, Senator Gale, that it really brought out so many different sides to Professor Harding. There are many people whose influence on our lives begin long before we know it. Professor Oswald Harding taught me at law school. And there, generations of young lawyers came to appreciate his intellect, his exacting standards, and his deep commitment to the law. Years later, when I entered this Honorable Senate in a date I will not mention on this occasion, he was the leader of opposition business, and I was the Deputy President of the Senate. It was therefore my privilege to know him first as my teacher, then as my parliamentary colleague, and over the years as a respected friend and fellow servant of Jamaica. It is from that perspective, as one who was fortunate enough to witness different chapters of his remarkable life, that I rise today to pay tribute to a truly distinguished Jamaican. Because Professor Harding belonged to that increasingly rare generation of public servants whose commitment to country transcended office, title, and political circumstances. His passing marks the end of a remarkable chapter in Jamaica's parliamentary and legal history. As the longest-serving senator in Jamaica's history, his contribution to this chamber is unparalleled. He remains the only person to have served as President of the Senate on 2 separate occasions, but presiding over our deliberations with dignity, fairness, and an unwavering respect for the traditions of parliamentary democracy. He served Jamaica with distinction as Attorney General, Minister of Justice, leader of opposition business in the Senate, parliamentarian, Queen's Counsel, legal scholar, and in the later years, the founding dean of the Faculty of Law at the University of Technology, helping to shape a new generation of lawyers. And you would think that that is impressive. It is, but there are many aspects of him that I never captured and some that I'm just learning about today. But distinguished offices alone cannot define a life. Those who knew Professor Harding will remember not only his formidable intellect, but his courtesy, his humility, his meticulous preparation, and unfailing civility. He demonstrated to me that one could hold firm convictions while treating others with respect, and that vigorous debate need never diminish mutual regard. Although he served the Jamaica Labour Party with unwavering commitment, he earned admiration across political lines for the fairness, impartiality, and dignity with which he presided over this chamber. That is perhaps, I think, for me, the highest tribute that can be paid to anyone entrusted with the stewardship of Parliament. His commitment to public service was matched by his devotion to learning. Even after a very distinguished career in public life, he pursued doctoral studies and returned to academia with characteristic enthusiasm. He was enthusiastic about everything he did. He remained throughout his life a scholar in the truest sense, curious, disciplined, and convinced that education is a lifelong pursuit. His legacy extends well beyond the law, and the President will know how much I admired him as a distinguished collector and patron of the arts. His renowned Hardingham collection has become a significant part of Jamaica's cultural heritage and the envy of those of us who share that joy. Built over many years with scholarship, discernment, and a profound appreciation for artistic excellence, the collection has earned national recognition, and I dare say international recognition, with pieces from the collection being exhibited by the National Gallery of Jamaica. It reflected Professor Harding's belief that preserving a nation's artistic heritage is in itself an act of public service, and how appropriate that on the day that we pay tribute to him, we had our very own poet laureate in this house. You know, Norman Manley reminds us there is no nobler task than to build a nation. Professor Harding devoted himself to this noble task. He helped to build Jamaica through the law, through parliament, through education, through public service, and through his stewardship of our cultural heritage. His was a life marked not by the pursuit of recognition, but by the quiet, steadfast pursuit of excellence. And then he wrote his autobiography. How did he call it? Not referring to any of those achievements, not referring to anything like that. he called it the grandson of Essie. And therefore, it did not surprise me, Mr. President, when you said that he was an advocate for the speaking of patois, because he had so many nuances and so many dimensions to his personality that every time you looked at him, it was like you were turning another chapter in a book. So today, I will say, the true measure of a parliamentarian is not simply the offices he held, but the institutions he leaves stronger because of his service. Professor Harding strengthened the Senate. He strengthened the legal profession. He strengthened legal education. He strengthened the Jamaica Labour Party. He enriched Jamaica's cultural life. Above all, he strengthened our democratic institutions, and he left an enduring example of integrity, scholarship, and service. To his beloved family, his friends, his former colleagues, the students who he taught, and all who mourn his passing, I extend my deepest condolences. His work is done, his example endures. May Professor Dr. Oswald Gaskell Harding rest in peace, and may Jamaica long remain grateful for his distinguished and faithful service.
Thank you very much, Senator Scott Motley. Senator Golden Campbell.
Mr. President, I really appreciate how Senator Scott Motley called his name a while ago, Oswald Gaskell Harding. I grew up, Mr. President, calling him Uncle Ozzy. He was a rarity in what is a hurly-burly world of politics, a vocation in which integrity, of purpose, civility, and respect for one's adversaries struggle to find a place. Throughout his long career in politics and public service, spanning more than 50 years, Uncle Ozzy demonstrated all of those qualities. I'm told, Mr. President, that even before his entry into politics, he had displayed his leadership skills and commitment to service as president of the Jamaica JCs. He joined the Labour Party in the late 1960s and in 1974 was elected Deputy General Secretary. He contested the general elections for East Rural St. Andrew in 1976 and 97 and Central Manchester in 1993. And what is notable about his character and the man he was, that although he was unsuccessful in those elections, it never dulled his spirit or his dedication to serving his country and his party. He later served as deputy chairman and later still as trustee, a position he held up to the time of his passing. Mr. President, much has been said about his temperament, and I want to echo some of those sentiments. Ozzy Harding's temperament and consummate skills led him into the Foreign Service, where he was appointed as our charge d'affaires in Mexico, an experience that prepared him for being appointed in 1980 as Minister of State in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. His legal acumen was recognized later when he was appointed Minister of Justice and Attorney General in 1986. But he would perhaps be best remembered, as some have noted, for his distinguished service in this chamber. First appointed in 1977, and Senator Scott Motley recognized the only one to be appointed twice. He served this chamber for almost 30 years as president for 8 of those. And in that role, he saw himself very much as custodian of the dignity of the chamber. I don't think that there are any who would dispute the excellent way in which he presided over the proceedings and the decorum that he so painstakingly maintained. I wish, Mr. President, that there were PBCJ recordings of the Parliament at that time so that young people could see the manner in which the Senate conducted its work and the manner in which he presided over its sittings. Fairness, Mr. President, he showed to both sides of the aisle in his conduct and rulings, especially when deliberations became contentious, and the respect he earned from all the members over whom he presided was evident. Mr. President, his work continued even after he retired from active politics. Many know of his critical support to the University of Technology in the establishment of the Faculty of Law, where he served as dean and professor, imparting his considerable knowledge and experience in the law to his students. But, Mr. President, above everything else, Uncle Ozzie was a good, decent human being, clothed in an irreproachable character, unquestionable integrity, urbanity, dignity, and an unflappable temperament. It has been a season for me, Mr. President, this 2026. He stands as the fifth of those I've lost who very much grounded my childhood and my fond memories. Today, as we honor his memory, let this not be the last that we make of him. His legacy provides so much from which we can learn and must emulate in giving service to our beautiful country in the way that he did for almost all of his adult life. And we in this chamber, Mr. President, would do well to emulate his conduct in this chamber. Uncle Ozzie, I thank you and Aunt Marigold for the beautiful memories of my childhood, the pleasant afternoons in your garden. I thank Jeremy for continuing to send those pictures, and Jerry, please continue to do that. Aunt Marigold, Jeremy, Nina, Zachary, Tamara, and the grandkids, rest assured, I am confident that he will rest in peace and that God's light will deservedly shine upon Uncle Ozzie. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I think we have one more tribute, Senator Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I am particularly delighted to be able to just share briefly in paying tribute to the life and work of the late Professor, the Honorable Oswald Harding. I am among, Mr. President, or should I say, was among a group of graduate students in that parliamentary term 2007 to 2011 who served as parliamentary research interns. And it was at that point in time when I would have first come into contact and active engagement with Ozzie Harding as he served in that term as President of the Senate. As parliamentary research interns, we would, among other things, attend the sittings of committees, and of course undertake work aimed at adding value to the work of our parliamentarians, particularly those
who needed support in respect of private members' motions and so on. And I just vividly recall whenever you would have interacted with Ozzy Harding, a particular word comes to mind, Mr. President, as I reflect, the word assuredness. He had this manner about him, unbothered, easygoing, but a distinct assuredness. And what that did for many of us who not just looked on vicariously, but worked closely with him, was that it imbued us equally with our own, sense of understanding, our own commitment to understanding the issues and applying oneself and being equally confident and assured. Mr. President, Ozzy Harding, for many of us who came up through the ranks in the Jamaica Labour Party, as you can appreciate, many youngsters would have either been a member of Young Jamaica or the party's young professional arm, G2K. And those youth arms, those youth outfits, Mr. President, serve quite importantly as useful training ground, an incubator, if you may, for, political talent. And Ozzy Harding was among those to whom we could look and would have looked for guidance. Fine example, you would have heard the leader of government, of opposition business, make mention on the conclusion of the Poet Laureate's interventions this morning about a kind of ministering to the soul. And when I reflect on my own interactions with Ozzy Harding, and indeed what he would have meant to others as well, is that own sense of him speaking to our soul and speaking to our sense of self and giving us a sense of purpose. So I am eternally indebted to the Harding family and to the late Professor Ozzy Harding in that regard. And given my own shop and that of our acting leader of government business today as a ministry family, the Ministry of Education, Youth, Skills and Information, lauds and expresses gratitude to the late Professor Harding for his contribution to education. His scholarship speaks for itself. He was, as indicated earlier, one of those pioneers in terms of philosophy, as in philosophy education, as a student of philosophy and a distinguished PhD in that particular discipline. And as a ministry, we're delighted for the fine example he would have set for the number of students he would have impacted over the years, and particularly, Mr. President, in relation to legal education, because the onset of the Faculty of Law at the University of Technology brought with it a meaningful vehicle for the expansion of access to legal education, which has long been a contentious issue. It had long been an aspiration of many, and Ozzy Harding and the folk at UTech, made it a reality, and he would have served with distinction as the UTech Law Faculty's first dean. And I'm sure that the UTech family is delighted for his effort and, of course, legacy in that regard. And as a system as a whole, Mr. President, education in Jamaica is better for having had the sterling and distinguished service of the late Professor Ozzy Harding. And on his passing, I must thank him and his family, who are contributors to nation building. His wife, equally, Marigold Harding, served as a board member for a couple terms of the Edna Manley College for the Visual and Performing Arts. She chaired the board of the Edna Manley College for the Visual and Performing Arts. So it's a family of service, a family that contributes to nation building, and from the education standpoint in particular, we here, and as a ministry family, we are delighted for the family's distinct service. And we trust that Professor Harding's soul will rest in peace and light perpetual shine on him as we bid him farewell and say, walk good, Prof. Harding.
Thank you very much, Senator Morgan. I'm going to ask in our usual way in which we honor past members of the Senate that the members of the Senate today rise and recognize 1 moment of silence in the memory of the late Professor Oswald Harding, former President of this Honorable Senate. May his soul rest in peace, and may his family, Marigold, Jeremy, and Zachary, recognize that the soul of the righteous are in the hands of God, and no torment will ever touch them. Thank you very much. Mr. Clark, would you ensure that the relevant record of the tributes given to Professor Harding are compiled and forwarded to Mrs. Harding, indicating that we had paid tribute and offered our thanks for the service of our late husband. Today, we also recognize the passing of the Honorable Vincent Stephen Francis, OJ-OD. Stephen Francis, OJ, one of Jamaica's most influential athletic coaches. Through his vision, discipline, and unwavering pursuit of excellence, he transformed the landscape of Jamaican athletes and helped to cement our country's reputation as a global sprinting powerhouse. As the co-founder and technical director of the MVP Track and Field Club, Coach Francis dedicated his life to identifying, nurturing, and developing world-class athletics. He firmly believed that Jamaica possessed the talent, expertise, and capacity to produce the world's finest athletes, and through coaching and training, he acted on that belief. Upon his guidance, distinguished athletes including Asafa Powell, Shelley Ann Fraser, and innumerable others, but these 2 in particular, brought international acclaim to Jamaica through their achievements at the highest level of sporting competition. In recognition of his outstanding contribution to track and field through coaching, he was conferred with the Order of Jamaica, the highest national honor, 3rd highest national honor, in 2017. So on behalf of the Honorable Senate, I offer the sincere condolences to his family, former athletes, friends, and the wider sporting fraternity. And I open the floor for brief tributes to the Honorable Vincent Stephen Francis, OJ. Here we go.
Thank you, sir. Permission to speak.
Senator Fitzhenley, permission to speak from a seat other than your own. No problem.
I appreciate it. Before I commence tribute to our own Jamaican icon, I seek your indulgence, sir, to note the passing of Sir Garfield Sobers, an icon of the region and of world cricket, a man who was very important to the West Indies in shaping Caribbean identity at a time when the vestiges of our colonial past, characterized by the bane of a superiority complex, dominated many Caribbean societies. Sir Garfield Sobers' contribution, his performances, and the way he carried himself with dignity was a powerful symbol of Caribbean excellence across the globe. He made many across the region understand that it was possible to dominate with excellence and dignity on the world stage. I lived in Barbados for approximately 2 years, and I know how important a figure Sir Gary is to the people of Barbados, and I pass on my condolences to them. Indeed, in Barbados, he is properly recognized as the Right Excellent Sir Garfield Sobers, a national hero. As I segue into the tribute to a legendary Jamaican, I begin with a quote. The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are often the ones who do. I believe that was a quote first adopted by American pioneer Steve Jobs, uttered in the year 1997. As fate would have it, 2 years later, in September of 1999, one Vincent Stephen Francis left a career in finance, where his expertise were highly sought after, and dared to change the face of track and field in Jamaica and across the globe. He co-founded the Maximizing Velocity and Power Track and Field Club, or popularly known as the MVP Club, and what an impact the club has had on track and field in Jamaica and across the globe. MVP members have achieved a remarkable tally across Olympic Games, World Championships, and World Indoor Championships. Under the guidance of Stephen Francis, the club has contributed more than 110 medals to Jamaica at major global championships, including over 37 Olympic medals and 75 World Championship medals. We hail Stephen Francis's work, which has transformed how Jamaica is viewed whenever a major track and field event comes a-calling. But for me, Stephen Francis's greatest contributions may be contemplated in a dual manner. Firstly, the countless lives he transformed. His ability to take people who were not regarded as so-called champ stars or folks who were seen to have average talent or were unknown. His ability to nurture them and turn them into world beaters and superstars on the global stage. And in so doing, his guidance made better and transformed many lives, enabling countless Jamaicans to be able to take better care of themselves, their families, and give back to their communities. I recall observing the Most Honorable Edward Seaga in the Parliament of Jamaica and Dr. Omar Davies. And though there were political adversaries, one thing they agreed on is that sports is a powerful unifier for a nation. It may transform dull passages into entertaining moments in time. It may make the sad happy, the bored excited, and glued to a TV screen. It has the ability to make those who are pained feel less discomfort because, for example, MVP Sasafa Powell was able to defeat Tyson Gay at the 2010 Golden Gala. The onerous nature of daily life is often made easier to navigate by sporting moments because, again, for example, Sharika Jackson of MVP with 21-44, was able to claim World Championship gold in Budapest and defeat the Americans, including Sha'Carri Richardson. There are people, sir, whose burden was made lighter by the fact that Dr. the Honorable Shelley and Fraser Price, OJ, who was then unheralded at the time, was able to burst on the scene on August 17, 2008, and clock 10.78 and win Olympic gold, defeating the Americans in the process. The sheer jubilation, accentuated by clanging pot covers on Ashoka Lane in Waterhouse or Halfway Tree in St. Andrew, spoke loudly about the pride we felt as a country. Now, colleagues, none of what I alluded to would have been possible without the guidance of Stephen Francis. Indeed, he was one of a kind. And for me, his greatest contribution to Jamaica is how his work, his unique expertise, and his dedication to seeing his mentees being the best they can be was able to consistently lift the Jamaican psyche and bring an outpouring of happiness to the nation, which from time to time encounters somber moments. Mr. Francis was a complex man. During my time in another vocation, I interacted with him a few times. He was bullish about the potential of Jamaica. He also understood the business of sports and the administrative side of the vocation. And what I appreciated about him is that in a world where many beat around the bush, Stephen Francis was a straight talker. He cared deeply about the well-being of Jamaica, including those he trained. From time to time, he'd have positive interactions with the government via Sports Minister, the Honorable Olivia Grange, about initiatives which the minister put in place to care for not only our track stars, but those who aspire to stardom and were putting in the work at the grassroots level. He was prepared to be critical when he saw fit, but I largely found that he was a fair man. For example, he did not hesitate in offering support when the minister set aside $45 million in an appreciation grant program for the Jamaican team which participated in the 2024 Paris Olympics. The monetary assistance program ahead of the Tokyo Olympics and the welfare fund introduced via the Sports Development Foundation also had his strong support. Indeed, the initiative of the Jamaica Olympic Association to put in place an Olympic Solidarity Scholarship Program is a kind of action that got his support, even as he tirelessly lobbied for more to be done. I think it's widely known that government interference in sports administration is not encouraged across the globe. But even as we pay tribute to Mr. Francis, even as we pay tribute to Mr. Francis, I think a great honor to his legacy would be if our administrators of the sport, that is the members of the various associations that govern sports in Jamaica, would place emphasis on moving away from a perception that some of the associations is an old boys club, which pander to administrators and their egos, and make it clear via demonstrable actions that more systems will be put in place to ensure that every participant in track and field, from the high school level to the senior cohort, feels that there's equal opportunity and support for them to develop their talent and to put them in a position where they are certain that they have been given the best opportunity to excel and do our country proud. I am in no doubt, sir, that if such a pivot is made at the level of administration of sports in Jamaica, it would be an awesome and great tribute to the legacy of Stephen Francis. Mr. Francis was a man who spoke truth to power, and he was not coy about sharing what was on his mind and how to make better systems. Today, we pay tribute to a man who hated, and he was not bashful about speaking out against maladministration, which from time to time has denied our sons and daughters the best opportunity to shine. In closing, sir, often the words icon and pioneer I find are misused or overused, not appositely designated. But there can be no doubt that Stephen Francis was a master of his craft and a legend of the sport. The government of Jamaica, via Sports Minister, the Honorable Oliver Grange, has announced that the life and work of Mr. Francis will be celebrated on August 15 at the National Indoor Center in Kingston. We are thankful for the life and contribution of Stephen Francis and offer our most sincere condolences to his family, including his brother Paul, his colleagues and associates, including Bruce James of MVP, and the many Jamaicans whose life, his expertise transformed, and the many who he set on a path to international stardom. An incredible innings has come to an end, 64 years of dedication to his country. May the soul of Vincent Stephen Francis find peace and light perpetually shine upon him. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Apka, for the Senate.
So,
Senator Brown, engage your other mic now, please. Yeah, it's not about it, don't leave.
President, it is well known that I believe that where we can find unity across the aisles, we must promote unity. It may come as a surprise to many today to hear that Senator Apka Fitzenley and Senator Lambert Brown is on the same set of pages. And that is because of the greatness of Stephen Francis, the Honorable Stephen Francis, OJ. He has brought the country together. He has given us so much to cheer about, so much joy in times of difficulty. We can count on Stephen Francis and others like him. And let me say up front, Senator Fitzenley, to have coached at one time the world fastest man, 9.77 in a software poem, that by itself is greatness. To follow that up with having the fastest over 200 female and the third fastest female alive today is double, triple greatness, and that is the work of Stephen Francis OJ. Coach Francis, to many, was an enigma. He was kind of mysterious and a puzzling individual, difficult to penetrate the veneer. But above all, it is recognized that Frano, as is popularly known as, was a genius. He was undoubtedly a success And let us proclaim it from this Senate. He was one of the world's, not Jamaica, the world's greatest track and field coach of all times. The record will show that Stephen Francis was brilliant at academia.
Absolutely.
His achievement as part of the Ulmer's High School National School Challenge quiz is well known. His 2 university degrees, including his master's, will confirm that a part in traditional business, in fact a successful part in traditional business, was open to him. Yet, the enigma chose track and field. He turned what would be a hobby for many into a successful business venture. I want to repeat that. He turned it into a business venture. Yeah. MVP was his vehicle. And you're correct, Senator Fitzhenley. Not many persons are aware what MVP means. Maximizing velocity and power. That was truly a mission, not just the name of the club. Because his entire life was constant improvement, maximizing the potential of our people. He showed that it could be done, and that's a lesson that we need to take from it. Not many believed in this enigma. But people like Bridget Foster, later Bridget Foster Hilton, and Michael Frater, they did. They believed in him. And it paid off for both of them, even to this day. Bridget became the first global 100-meter champion in the hurdles for Jamaica. Frater winning silver in 2005 in Helsinki. Frano did that. There was a time, President, when if a Jamaican ended in a final at the Olympics or world champion, that was a great achievement for a little country. Raymond Stewart, 100 meter, come 8th. Something to cheer about. Then came Frano, later his friend Glenn Mills, and they spoiled us. We were no longer cheering, reaching the final. Asafa ran 5th in a race, and we condemned Asafa because Frano and Glenn Mills and others led us to believe that this small country, if we entered a race and we didn't get the gold medal, we would have failed. There are many people, many nations would just be happy to be at the Olympics and the World Championship. But for us, Frano spoiled us in a good way because we wanted always to excel. The thing about Frano is that he searched for the unknowns. Not the big stars, the unknowns. And then he made them well known. He not only made them medal winners, but he made them into professionals who were well rewarded financially. Did I say MVP was a business venture? And those who participate in MVP were rewarded financially as well. The names Asafa Powell, Elaine Thompson-Era, Shelley Ann Fraser, well, later on, Tajir Gill, Rowan Watson, Kishian Thompson, Nishan Ebanks, Sharika Williams, Khalees Spencer Carter, and Christine Day were not names that many people knew. They didn't excel at champs, yet Frano found them, saw in them greatness, and made them champions. And to Frano and those, we say thank you. Among people under his charge were Sharon Simpson, Shellyan, and I remember the night when Shellyan came to the trials and won a new era because VC Campbell Brown was on her way out. And that's after Maureen before. Names like Jermaine Mason, Tia and Tina Clayton, they all were proteges of Frano, and he made them achieve their potential. While most veteran coaches ended up focusing on specific events, 100 meters, 200 meters, I like Bert Cameron, 400 meters. Frano was truly one of a kind. He had global medals, or he trained global medalists in sprint, 100 meters, 200. Sprint hurdles, 400 meters hurdles, Melanie Walker. The quarter mile. But he didn't rest just on the track. He was involved in long jump, J. Gale. High jump, mentioned Jermaine Mason. And shot put, Marlon, he was an all-rounder. This man, who when you look at him, plump like you and I, appear disheveled sometimes, but his greatness wasn't in his clothes or his physical appearance. It was in his mind. Athletes coached by Frano now have national records. 100 meters women, 200 meter women, high jump men, 400 meters hurdles women, men's 100 under 20. That's greatness, whichever way you look at it. His charges were not only local, but he had international athletes coming to Jamaica. Antoinette Strong from Bahamas, Sada Williams from Barbados, some from India at one point, and others from abroad. So the tributes have come in about Frano from his athletes, and you have heard them. The president, even president for a day, or for a couple of minutes, sent again. I happened to have been at the stadium a couple of evenings, trying to walk the track, walk the stairs, then trying to get fit, and saw Frano coaching Bridget Foster, as she then was. I saw essentially a sergeant major in charge of a delinquent soldier who was being punished. The rigor that Frano took Bridget through had her chewing up. And it was clear to me there could be no gain without pain. It was tough love. And Minister, I just thought it was torture that the athlete was going through. But a tough love showed Bridget being a coach with Frano today. She appreciated what he was doing in pushing her and maximizing her potential. And if I was related to Bridget, I'd have gone and attacked Frano because of what I saw him doing to that athlete. But that's the way we get success. What may be very significant, President, is that Frano has begun and started a legacy. He left a number of coaches behind, his brother Paul was there, people like Bruce James. But there are a number of people who came from the MVP stable who are now coaches and winning medals for Jamaica. In business, we call that succession planning. In politics, I think we call it dynasty making. But Frano hasn't just departed. He has left with us templates from which we can work. So I have mentioned Sharika much in this, but she's among the top sprinters in the world. And I, like Senator Fitzgerald, believe there are some tributes we could best pay to Frano, to learn from him. And I start by saying, if we adopt the principle of continuous improvement, Frano wasn't one to rest on his laurel. If we want to teach productivity and the value of productivity in the country, let's take the work of Stephen Francis O.J. 977 world record was followed by 972 because he didn't think, as we all know, that 977 would be the world record forever. He saw how we could maximize velocity and power, step by step, motion by motion, process by process. So if we want to pay a tribute to Frano, learn that productivity must be a key part of what we do. Second lesson that we should learn is his reliance kit, Senator Duncan, and data. What gets measured is likely to get done. And Frano was a big data-driven decision maker. And that's something, if we want to pay tribute to Frano, is learn to respect and be driven by data. Another lesson, and this is for the business and all of us in Jamaica, Frano understood that we were not operating just in a local environment, that the globe was it, and we should become world beaters. And Frano showed us that as Jamaicans, wherever in this island we came from, we could beat the best in the world. And Senator Morgan, we could even beat those who cheat in international affairs, whether by tariffs or by drugs. So Frano taught us that our country could compete with the best and beat them. Let's learn that. And like you, Senator Fitzgerald, I appreciate the fact that Frano was fearless. He was not afraid to speak truth to power. And he didn't care what anybody think about him, say about him, as long as he was able to speak his truth, whether to politicians or sports administrators. As Frank Sinatra would say, and I paraphrase, for Frano, he planned each charted course, each careful step along the byway, and more, much more than this, he did it his way. And Frank Sinatra continued to say, yes, there were times, I'm sure you knew, when he bit off more than he could chew. But through it all, when there was doubt, he ate it up, spit it out, face it all. And we can say with certainty that Frano stood tall and did it his way. Mr. President, as a grateful nation, indeed, the world bids farewell to a giant, a visionary, a motivator, the epitome of success, and above all, a humble man, a man of great humility, a man who embodied the spirit of Jamaica, that with liquor, but with talawa. May his soul rest in peace as we thank his family for lending us us. Even as short as his tenure was on this world, he left us a man respected, a giant, a coach who have left a legacy and who will allow Jamaica to smile and keep smiling. Smile, Jamaica. Frano, we thank you. May his life be lived by others, and may we all be, in some ways, like Frano. May it please you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Brown. And we will always reflect on your sprinting and your exercise part. Senator Tavares Finson.
Mr. President, I rise today with a profound sense of sadness, but also with immense gratitude to pay tribute to one of the greatest architects of Jamaican sporting excellence, the late coach Stephen Frano Francis. Today, Jamaica mourns not only the loss of an exceptional coach, but the passing of a visionary, a mentor, a nation builder, and a man whose life's work elevated our country to unprecedented heights on the world stage. There are individuals who participate in history, and there are those who indeed, Mr. President, shape it. Stephen Francis undoubtedly belonged to the latter. His contribution to Jamaica cannot be measured solely by medals, records, championships, or accolades. His true legacy lies in the generations of young Jamaicans whose lives he transformed through discipline, belief, opportunity, and excellence. Mr. President, when the history of global athletics is written, Jamaica will forever occupy a place of distinction. While our athletes become household names across every continent, behind many of those remarkable performances stood a quiet, brilliant strategist whose influence was felt in every stride they took. Stephen Francis revolutionized sprint coaching. His methods challenged conventional wisdom. His standards demanded excellence. His vision produced champions. As the founder and head coach of the MVP Track Club, he created an environment where talent was nurtured with scientific precision, uncompromising discipline, and unwavering belief in the potential of Jamaican athletes. He truly believed that. Many considered him unconventional, Mr. President. History has proven he was simply ahead of his time. And many others who proudly wore the black, green, and gold. Each athlete possessed individual talent, but Stephen Francis helped transform talent into greatness. He understood that speed alone was never enough. Greatness demanded sacrifice, character, and precision. Those principles became the foundation upon which he, Mr. President, built champions. Those champions, Jamaican. Mr. President, beyond the medals, was the man. Those who knew Coach Francis often described him as deeply analytical, intensely committed, and fiercely protective of his athletes. He was never one to seek the spotlight. Indeed, many of the greatest accomplishments occurred quietly, away from the television cameras and newspaper headlines. While others celebrated victory, he was already preparing for tomorrow's challenge. That relentless pursuit of excellence became his signature. It is perhaps fitting, Mr. President, that a man who dedicated his life to developing others rarely sought personal acclaim. Instead, he found fulfillment in seeing young Jamaicans realize dreams they once believed were impossible. Mr. President, his work carried significance far beyond athletics. Every international medal won by a Jamaican athlete inspires and had inspired pride across our nation. There's another aspect of his legacy that deserves recognition, Mr. President. He believed in education and preparation. He believed that coaching was both an art and a science. His meticulous attention to biomechanics, physiology, psychology, and training methodology transformed coaching standards, not only in Jamaica, but internationally. Mr. President, on a personal note, I wish to acknowledge the kindness and generosity that Coach Stephen Francis extended to me during my tenure as president of the Jamaican Cycling Federation. Stephen was never one to limit his support to track and field alone. He understood that the success of Jamaican sport depended on all of us working together. I will always remember his willingness to offer advice, encouragement, and practical assistance, particularly when I traveled with the Jamaican delegation to the 2002 Commonwealth Games. His counsel, his professionalism, and his genuine commitment to Team Jamaica reflected the kind of person he was. Someone who celebrated the success of every Jamaican athlete at those games, regardless of the discipline. That spirit of collaboration and national service spoke volumes about his character and remains one of the many reasons he earned the admiration and respect of so many across our sporting fraternity. Mr. President, I also wish to share another deeply personal reflection. During the period when I lived and trained in Cuba, Coach Stephen Francis was an invaluable source of encouragement and motivation. Despite the demands of his own work, he always found the time to offer guidance, share his knowledge, and provide words of support that strengthened my resolve. He also assisted me by facilitating contacts within Cuba's sporting community, opening doors and helping me build relationships that proved beneficial to my development as a cyclist representing Jamaica. Those acts of generosity were never done for recognition or praise. They reflected his genuine desire to see fellow Jamaicans succeed wherever they were pursuing excellence. It is these quiet acts, Mr. President, of mentorship and selflessness, often unseen by the public, that reveal the true measure of the man and the enduring impact he has had on so many lives, including my own. Mr. President, may his soul rest in peace and light perpetual shine upon him.
Thank you very much, Senator Tavares Finch. Senator Morgan, you're on your feet for your brief remarks.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. President. Mr. President, as a patriotic Jamaican who would have been entertained and delighted on so many occasions by the exploits of our athletes and having a clear sense as to the body of work and support that went into making what we saw on the track possible. It is an absolute delight for me to register my own thanks and pay tribute to the late Stephen Frano Francis on his passing. He, as my colleagues have all mentioned, made a tremendous contribution to the development of track and field here in Jamaica, and Jamaica, in terms of our athletics program, is certainly better off for his life work. Mr. President, a couple of years ago, when Kishane Thompson won the national championship, he, to the chagrin of many a person in media, and indeed to the surprise and perhaps dismay of many of us in the stadium as supporters, he made a beeline, Mr. President, for Stadium East. Indeed, he departed the stadium, and as we subsequently learned, he went to engage with his coach, Stephen Frano Francis. That was a profound and memorable moment, Mr. President, because it was, unorthodox. Athletes, upon winning, would, revel in the moment, engage with the press corps, and, take the interviews and have all the photo ops and so on. But Kishane Thompson made a beeline for Frano. It speaks, Mr. President, for the relationship that they had, the relationship that Frano himself fosters in his athletes, and indeed what he meant to them, and I'm sure Kishane Thompson numbers among them. It was Senator Brown, Mr. President, who said something quite important. What? That on this matter, on this matter, Mr. President, Senator Brown made the observation that perhaps the most appropriate and fitting tribute to pay to the late coach, Stephen Frano Francis, is to draw lessons from the life he led, to focus attention really on some key takeaways. And that's the context and backdrop against which I rise this morning. When the news came through 2 Sunday mornings ago of Frano's passing, I, like many Jamaicans, took my device in hand and I went to Facebook and my other socials to pen a tribute, noting with regret Coach Francis's passing. And as I did so, Mr. President, I couldn't help but applying some lessons to a shop that I serve, education. Some key takeaways and nuggets that can be relevant to the development of our students and the teaching and learning enterprise. What do I mean by that? First of all, Frano and the MVP outfit made UTEC, which has now come to be dubbed the home of world-class athletes, yes? Made UTEC their home. I, like Portfolio Minister, Senator Dr. the Honorable Dana Morris-Dixon, is delighted that our ministry played a role through UTEC in this instance in facilitating the emergence of MVP Track Club. It provided a home for the training of athletes and for their conditioning to become world beaters. And I must register the nation's thanks to UTEC and its administration, then its incumbent administration, for the continued partnership and support that they have given to the MVP track program, which has been serving Enterprise Jamaica well over the years, Mr. President. Indeed, so great has the collaboration between MVP and UTEC been that other proponents of the conditioning of athletes, other track clubs, have sought to make education facilities their base. There's a program at the UWI Bowl. I know there's work and training that goes on at GC Foster College and indeed at other parts of the island. And that's well, and I gather Jamaica College as well, because some athletes are conditioned there. I know Mrs. Fraser Price and current coach or former coach, Renata Walcott, make Jamaica College and the Ashenheim track their base for training. So as a ministry, we're delighted to be able to pour into our athletes and pour into their coaches in this way. And Frano did some sterling and pioneering work in that regard, and we'll register our gratitude for that. Mr. President, the observation, whenever you think of Frano, Coach Francis, the observation comes, and indeed it has been made in the Senate here this morning, that unlike others who will typically gravitate toward the dangling and nice and shiny objects, Coach Francis didn't necessarily go after the premier athletes, the superstars at Champs, and those athletes that were deemed to be destined for greatness. In my own way, I would like to consider Frano Francis as having had an eye for talent. He knew how to spot a diamond, as it were, in the rough, because many of those persons we now celebrate nationally for blazing a trail and achieving much on the world stage are persons who would have come to coach Stephen Frano Francis and the MVP outfit, of which he was associated, as diamonds in the rough. And I consider that an important takeaway for our education system in a particular sense. For many in the teaching and learning enterprise, we will naturally gravitate to this, stellar student, this prodigy of sorts, the students who are self-directed and independent learners, and they are settled in the teaching and learning environment and they do well. But we have to implore our teachers generally, persons who come into contact with our children, to inculcate and develop that capacity to engage those learners who present before you for instruction, who are not necessarily, independent learners, and as a result will require additional support. They are proverbial, Mr. President, diamonds in the rough, because like the students who are the prodigies in the class, those students have potential, and they too, with the appropriate levels of support, nurture, and engagement, can go on to become a better version of themselves, certainly from a student performance and education outcome standpoint. So that's a clear takeaway for me. The whole fact that when we teach and develop students, adding value is an important consideration, and that's what we must place a premium on. This ability to take a student from point A to point B, add value to them, and make them better in terms of student performance, because that is what Frano did with his athletes. Not many persons would have known of Asafa Powell from Charlie Mount at the boys' champs level. We would have known of some of his contemporaries who went on to blaze a trail at champs, and then lo and behold, we didn't hear much from some of them after that. Now, another lesson Another lesson is the trust that Frano fostered with his athletes. He believed in them and they believed in him. And that's an important lesson and assurance as well for our stakeholders in education to have and appreciate. In that, if you devise a system, as Frano did, that was athlete-centered and attention was focused in a holistic and empowering way on athlete development, it's important, a good takeaway, Mr. President, to be learner-centered, student-centered in how we impart instruction and how we approach pedagogy. Because being student-centered, believing in your student in the way Frano believed in his athletes, would be an appropriate way to foster trust and have them feeling that persons support them and believe in them, and of course they can go on to be optimal versions of themselves by way of applying themselves in the same way an athlete would do. Another key point here, Mr. President. As I mentioned just now, Coach Frano Francis didn't necessarily go for the star athletes coming out of champs. What he premised his program on was the whole business of application and discipline, just applying oneself with steely determination. It underscores the turn of phrase, Mr. President, that it is one's attitude and not one's aptitude that determines one's altitude. I want to repeat it. Based on how Frano did his work and the kinds of athletes on which he would place a premium, it is clearly one's attitude and not so much one's aptitude that determines one's altitude. And it is something I'd want to commend to our stakeholders in education, because applying oneself and doing the diligent and painstaking work, some of the work Senator Brown recounted just now, in terms of literally seeing an athlete having to throw up as a result of the rigorous regime that they were subjected to as part of the optimizing of speed and talent. Mr. President, Frano also distinguished himself as someone who provided sound advice to his athletes. And that, for me, is another takeaway and lesson in the development of our children generally, not least in the teaching and learning environment. What do I mean by this? Melaine Walker, Mr. President, it is said, when she went to Frano, an MVP, she had an outlook for herself and her own ambition and aspiration, and it was for the sprints. But it was Frano who, you know, in keeping with his own knack and eye for talent and capacity, who really made Melaine Walker not a sprinter, but more so a hurdler, a sprint hurdler. So she did the quarter-mile event, albeit over the obstacles, so the 400-meter hurdles. And Melaine Walker went on in 2008, the Beijing Olympic Games, to mine gold in the sprint hurdles. So the key takeaway here is that if you are being student-centered and client-centered in providing your service, you can tailor your engagement and use your own professional judgment, experience, and expertise, not least, again, as I say, in the teaching and learning environment to bring out the best in your student. Because a student, for example, may want to pursue the sciences, and you as a classroom teacher may realize that, listen, perhaps this person can go on to make a fine lawyer, you know. So you orient the child toward the grammar school area as it relates to literature, history, those disciplines, and indeed law, which is offered at the CAPE level now. So as others have said, Mr. President, there are so many useful takeaways from the life and work of the late coach Stephen Francis, and I'm delighted that there are exemplary nuggets and lessons that we, as an education sector, can draw from Frano, some of which I would have enumerated just now. And in light of his passing, I wish to extend words of support to those athletes whose lives he would have transformed over the years, taking many from obscurity in some instances to prominence on the world stage. I'm sure they are eternally indebted to him, and the course that their life took was as a result of their interface and study at the hands of Coach Stephen Francis. To his family, friends and colleagues, and indeed those athletes who you would have conditioned over the years, Mr. President, I say be comforted by your good times with Coach Francis, and I trust that they all be comforted in this their hour of bereavement. And to Coach Francis, we bid him adieu, and as we do so, we wish for his soul peaceful rest and trust that perpetual light will shine on him. Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Minister, thank you, Senator Morgan. Minister and leader, today has been a reflective day, and it would be remiss of me as we close the tributes to former President Harding and Coach Francis. It would be remiss of me not to mention the fact that the lower house lost two stalwarts recently, and just very briefly to say that Dean Alexander Peart, who we call Deanie, was a 5-member term member of Parliament who represented Manchester Northwest. He served the lower house from 1989 to 2011. During that time, he was responsible for many ministerial portfolios, including local government, land and environment. Served as Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Labour, Welfare and Sports, Minister of State, the Ministries of Construction and Local Government, Transportation and Works, and had the honor of serving in the House of Representatives with his brother, the former Speaker, Michael Peart. So those of us who have more than a passing acquaintance with that generation would refer to Deanie and Michael, the brothers Peart from Manchester. In 2009, he was confirmed with the Order of Distinction in the rank of Commander in recognition for his distinguished service to the Parliament of Jamaica. And the lower house also lost perhaps a lesser known name, but no less in terms of his service to the Parliament, the country. Arthur Easter Nelson, OD, was a 2-term member of Parliament who represented the constituency of St. James West Central from 1993 to 2002. And during his time in the Parliament, he served the people of his constituency with quiet dignity, grace, and commitment. He was, we are informed by those who were close to him, warm and generous, who readily shared his knowledge and experience with others. Madam Leader, if any of your members wish to speak briefly on either Deanie or Mr. Nelson, they are welcome to do so at this time.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Floyd Morris will speak to Dean Peart and Senator Alan Bernard.
Thank you. Senator Professor Morris.
Thank you very much.
You need the lectern?
No, thanks. Thank you. I rise to make a contribution to pay condolences to the passing of a colleague and a friend and one who has given selfless service to our country. And Mr. President, I do so with great passion and as a friend of Dini, because I have the distinction of being the only individual to serve with him as a minister of state in a ministry. And out of that came a bond that lasted upon till his death. And I went to see him the Thursday before he died. And we had a very interesting discussion, Mr. President. And so you can understand how touching it is for me based on our friendship. Mr. President, Dean Alexander Peart emanates from a political family that has given tremendous service to Jamaica dating back to his father, Ernest Peart, who was himself a minister of government. And also his mother, who served in the British Army as a recruit from Jamaica. And so their family knows nothing but public service. And one of the things that I am very pleased about is that in the entire history of public service, one can never point to an instant or an occasion where whether Dini, Mikey, or Ernest have been involved in any questionable activity in public service. And so when I became a minister of government in 2001, it happened at a time when my political mentor, Horace Clark, was exiting the political stage. And I tell you, if you want to do extremely well in politics, make sure that you surround yourself with good people. And Dean Peart was placed in the Ministry of Labor and Social Security in 2002. And I had the opportunity of working with him. And I make no bones to say, Mr. President, that he was the best minister that I have worked with in my entire 7 years in the government of Jamaica. Because, and I know that Abka will not say so loudly, but I've heard a lot of ministers of state complain right across the aisle about how ministers relate to ministers of state, because in some instance they feel a bit threatened and, you know, they sort of suppress the talent of their ministers of state. That was not the case with Dean Peart. Dean Peart made it known that the Prime Minister assigned a Minister of State with responsibilities in the ministry and he's going to allow the Minister of State to do his work. And I learned a lot from him. And that led to the bond and the friendship that we have had over the years. And even though he was replaced in the ministry in 2003, we still maintained that relationship. I will tell you, Mr. President, to show the closeness that we enjoyed, after we lost the 2007 election, I had to leave the government house that I was living in Mona. And I had a dog who was very, very close to me. Very, very close. He was very jealous and very protective of me because he was trained. Samson. And so when I had to leave and go to my house that I had built on the other side of Mona, they said to me that, boy, we don't allow dogs to come in the community because of restrictions and so forth. I had a long quarrel with them because of the nature of the dog. So I had to give the dog away. And the person who I ended up giving the dog to was Dini, because he used to come to the house and he was accustomed to the dog. And about 6 months after I went up to Dini's house. No. Dini had the dog, and once the dog saw me coming through the gate, the dog ran away from him and jumped on me as if, here comes my boss, here comes my master, you know. And but that was the nature of the friendship that Dini and I had.
I wonder what happened when you were leaving.
So, you know, I mean, Dini was a genuine human being. And that is why he never lost an election in his entire political career. He started out as councillor in 1986 and eventually became the mayor of Mandeville. And because of the nature of the representation that he offered in his parish council division, he ran as the member of parliament candidate for the PNP in 1989. And he won in 1989, he won in 1993, he won in 1997, he won in 2002, and he won in 2007. He has never faced defeat in his political career. And likewise, his brother, Mikey Peart, because of their commitment to building people. And I have met several students at the University of the West Indies. And they say, we are here from Northwest Manchester because our parents benefited from the efforts of Dean Peart when he was Member of Parliament, because he was very passionate and committed to the education of his people. And so, Mr. President, I am saddened, and we on this side are saddened by the passing of this colossus, an individual who has given selfless service to Jamaica. And I am very happy that I had a long chat with him before his passing. And the conversation, Senator Lambert, the conversation, Senator Lambert, was rotated around his personal love and appreciation for me. And he said, one of the things that I am happy for is that I live to see you become a professor at the university. And I said to him, I turned to him and said that I am happy that I am here to see your son, Kari, taking such good care of you. Because I remember when Dean insisted that Kari was going to be a medical doctor. And he did everything that he could for Kari to be a doctor. And it was a joy, Minister, to see his last son taking such excellent care of him. That's why I say to us, invest in our children, and our children will take care of us. May his soul rest in peace.
You have to tell him, say, Dean, Miss Shelley. You have to tell him that Dean asked you for Shelley.
Yes, 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 yes. Yes, he was very much happy as well for Shelley because, I mean, we have him on video when we were getting married and we were dancing, going in to this song, She's Royal. And he, with his loud mouth, was there saying, "Going ahead, Friday," you know, because he was always enthusiastic about the things that I could do as a blind person. So, you know, I'm very happy to make this tribute, and may his soul rest in peace, and I'm looking forward to seeing him on that great getting up morning when the eastern skies shall be open and the trumpet of the Lord shall be sounded, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. May his soul rest in peace.
Thank you very much. Senator Allen, I'm allowing you brief. Can I say something? You know, you're pointing at Senator Morgan. Let me tell you something. No, don't do that. Because if you were to put Coach Francis's life in terms of verbal presentation, you wouldn't have any interest in Senator Morgan as a long-distance presenter. You know? I wanted to be a sprinter.
A cricketer. Thank you very much again, Mr. President. I rise to pay tribute to Arthur Nelson, Member of Parliament, former Member of Parliament for West Central St. James. I know Arthur before politics, and I'm looking across from my colleagues, Senator Sinclair and Senator Thompson. We are all Cornwallians. Arthur Nelson was a gentleman, a man of might, as we say at Cornwall College. And so I extend condolences to the Cornwall College family as well. Arthur Nelson was an outstanding student and footballer at Cornwall College in the 50s, culminating in his role as vice captain for the great 1953 La Costa Cup and Olivier Shield. Arthur also gave great service to the school on the school board and as an executive of the Cornwall College Old Boy Association. I recall my last engagement with Arthur Nelson was in 2016. At that time, I was the vice president for the Cornwall College Old Boy Association Kingston chapter. And I would have organized a year group gathering. And again, even though the chapter in Kingston, we always gather in Montego Bay. And we were looking for a venue.
Pelican, you use Pelican.
No, we didn't use Pelican. Pelican is for the other people. Close enough, close enough. It was actually a river this time. And he graciously offered a venue that he was the proprietor for to host that event. And he came along, even though he was close to half a century ahead of us. He came along with his wife, sat with us, and we had an extremely enlightening engagement on Cornwall College and Old Boys politics. But Arthur Nelson's life in politics reminds us of his quiet strength and how power and ambition was demonstrated without being loud. As a member of Parliament, Arthur Nelson was never the loudest voice in the room. He was not driven by spectacle or self-promotion. Instead, he earned the respect of those around him through humility, integrity, and an unwavering commitment to serve the people of his constituency and, by extension, St. James. When he first contested the St. James West Central constituency in the 1993 general elections, he was a political newcomer. Yet he secured one of the most decisive victories ever recorded in St. James for a first-time candidate. That remarkable mandate spoke eloquently to the esteem in which he was held by the people. The people were not simply voting for a political party, they were placing their trust in Arthur Nelson. In Arthur Nelson, they saw family, they saw a man deeply rooted in this community. They saw a legacy of service that long predated his entry into electoral politics. They saw commitment, decency, and integrity. Above all, they saw someone they believed would faithfully represent their interests. That confidence was reflected not only in the overwhelming mandate they gave him in 1993, but also in the transformation that took place across Western Jamaica during the years he served. Under the leadership of Prime Minister P.J. Patterson, there were deliberate expansion of national capital investment beyond the Kingston metropolitan area. The Greater Montego Bay and the West Central St. James benefit from major public investments, including the Montego Bay Sewage Improvement Project, the construction of the Catherine Hall Sports Complex, the development of Cornwall Courts improvements, and improvements in the island's road network, and significant investment in water and other public infrastructure to support the region and its constituency. Arthur Nelson understood that representation was measured not by rhetoric, but by results. He worked diligently to ensure that West Central St. James had a voice at the table and that his constituents shared in the opportunities created by the national development agenda. His greatest legacy was not the size of his electoral victory, but the trust he earned, the lives he touched, and the example he set. He demonstrated that leadership is rooted in character. The public office is about service, and humility is one of the highest forms of strength. Mr. President, we want to honor the memory of Arthur Nelson by embracing some of these same values. May his soul rest in peace and light perpetually shines upon him.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Senator Allen. May those who we have honored today, and it has been a day of honoring our fallen colleagues, may those who we have honored today rest in peace and light perpetual shine upon them. And may their legacy of service, dedication, and excellence continue to inspire generations to come. Statements by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the Senate are the following: Auditor General's Department Certified Appropriation Accounts, Head 2011, recurrent, for the Accountant General's Department for the year 2022 to 2023. And by way of information, Annual Report of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee for the period April 2025 to March 31, 2026, and Special Report of the Constituency Development Fund Committee of the House of Representatives regarding the sum provided for project execution and the administrative arrangements for managing the fund.
Thank you. Announcements. Bills brought from the Honorable House of Representatives.
The following is a message from the Speaker of the House of Representatives to the Honorable Senate. I have the honor to advise the Honorable Senate that on the 14th day of July 2026, a bill entitled An Act to Establish a Regulatory Framework for the Conduct of Mediation in Jamaica, including community mediation, to provide for the registration of mediators and the licensing and regulation of mediation service providers, to make provisions for facilitated contract negotiation, to give effect to the provisions of the United Nations Convention on the International Settlement Agreements resulting from mediation done in New York on the 20th day of December 2018, and to provide for connected matters, was passed in the House of Representatives with 2 amendments. This message is from the Most Honorable Juliet Holness, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Petition. I'm sorry.
Mr. President, I signify my willingness to take charge of this bill.
A bill shortly entitled the Mediation Act 2026 read a first time.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice of second reading.
Reports from committees. Notices of motions given orally. Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to the sitting of the Senate. Motions for leave to introduce bills. The presentation of bills without the leave of the Senate first obtained. Public business. Minister.
Mr. President, indeed, today has been a very soft day. We have been able to do several tributes for persons who have contributed significantly to life in Jamaica, and it's also an honor to have heard from our Poet Laureate this morning. And as we had mainly tributes, and I'm in a poetry mood, Mr. President, if I just give you a few words from one of our Poet Laureate's poems. Before Winter, it reminds me of what we've been talking about today, where we're honoring persons. And it starts with, I imagine there's a place of deep rest, not in the resting, but after, when the body has forgotten the weight of fatigue. And he closes that poem by saying something that sounds so beautiful. I am helpless to this soft disappearing that some call sleep. I will stretch out and breathe. Stephen Francis, Deanie Peart, Arthur Nelson, we do pray that they are stretching out and breathing. And we thank them for their service. And I know as a younger member of the Parliament, I especially liked listening to the stories of other parliamentarians and the examples they gave. And they were strong personalities, but they were also good people. And they showed us how to act, and to act across the aisle too, for the betterment of Jamaica. And so, Mr. President, with that, there's no more business to be done today, and I ask that we adjourn for a date to be fixed.
1 minute. Senator Scott Motley.
May I be so presumptuous, Minister? It struck me that we have been speaking a lot about death. And I'm sure that you all would want to join me in wishing the President a happy belated birthday. because I notice there's a lot of clapping going on over here. No, because we need to celebrate life and to say thanks while people are with us. And we thank you for your service, Mr. President, your service to Jamaica, your service to this nation. We wish you long life and prosperity. Of course. But I wanted to take this moment just to acknowledge you, and I hope you had an amazing day.
And I hope
I received that. I usually say to people on their birthday, keep healthy and safe. So I would always give the person a regard and say, oh, happy birthday, keep healthy and safe. And I got a message from someone, and I've changed my greeting going forward because it said, keep healthy, safe, and lucky. So I think increasingly we try to keep healthy and safe, but we kind of rely upon the luck a bit. Minister.
Mr. President, we also want to say happy birthday to you. It's a belated birthday, but what's interesting is to hear the leader of opposition business in the Senate speak to you in such kind terms. It says a lot, Mr. President, about who you are and how you take charge of the business in the Senate. Today we were honoring a former president of the Senate, and we said some very kind things about how he presided over these sittings, and you are of that same ilk. And so we want to thank you for what you do. And
you sound like some sort of goodbye.
You want to hear these nice things. You want to hear these nice things while you're alive.
Let me tell you something. In the nature of these things, you never know, You might be saying next week, my God, can you imagine that?
That's not our intention, Mr. President, and you should...
My God, can you imagine that he has moved on to something more?
No. Mr. President, I see you some mornings. In the past, I used to see you more, but because I'm not there, I used to see you running, and he can run at a pace that I cannot run at. And so I know that you are in good health and that you're doing what you need to do to remain in good health. But Mr. President, having said that, we don't really have any more business to do today, and so I asked that we adjourn for a date to be fixed, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. The members would have heard the question. Those in favor? Against? This Honorable Senate now rises for a date to be fixed.